talk with you today is going to be on personal statements and interview skills. If you've got any questions, we'll save them to the end. I can't currently view the questions, so we'll just have a look at the end and see where we're at. And if you've got anything in the meantime that's urgent, we'll see if we can answer it as we go along. So this is going to have a little bit on personal statements as a whole, what structure. You may have already known a little bit on this already in the new structure that we have for UCAS and personal statements. You should know what UCAS is, but again, if you don't, I can support with that at the end. We're going to go over what you should include. So this also includes the questions they ask. We've got our top tips, and we also have some interview prep skills, looking at the STAR method and some do's and don'ts, which are important when you're going into an interview, particularly for the healthcare sector, when they are very big on having in-person interviews. So what is a personal statement? It is a key part of your UCAS application. This is the only part of your UCAS application that you have control over as well. So it's your chance to influence a university's decision. It'll be your chance to basically tell the tutors all about your achievements, anything you've done out with, like volunteering, part-time work, anything like that, as well as your hobbies. So they also like to see things like that and show your personality. Particularly in healthcare, this is where they will particularly look at your personality and the volunteering you do, whether that's in care homes, whether that's in nurseries or anything like that. They're going to really look at that care aspect. If you're someone that maybe helps somebody at home, or your personal carer, again, these are something that they really like to hear about, and you definitely should include it in your personal statement. So key facts: your personal statement now consists of 3 questions. You may have seen it before that it was an essay format. However, although before it was an essay format, the structure is very much the same, and they still sort of expect the same sort of answers. It's just in a question format. They believe to be quite easier when approaching this. It's 4,000 characters across all 3 questions, and you only have 1 personal statement for all of your choices. So really think about, if you want to go into nursing, you don't want to be picking something along the lines of, let's go into adult nursing, but then you're writing about, oh, I could do adult or childcare nursing. They're very different. Some universities don't particularly like it if you're struggling between the two. They like you to be set on which one you're thinking about. And again, there's no longer a limit to line count. So I've got a bit of a blocked nose, so bear with me. Question 1. Why do you want to study this course or subject? So this is the first question they ask, and it doesn't need to be a long answer. So don't mistake these questions for needing huge paragraphs. Treat it as if it was an essay format. So your first question would be an introduction to why you want to do that course. Again, start with something interesting. So what's inspired you to go into this subject? Was there a reason that you're passionate about paramedic practice? What sparked that interest? Was your family a nurse or a carer or a doctor? What sort of led you down this route? And then, of course, talk about your future plans. Usually this would be in the end of a personal statement, but we include it now at the beginning. So include where you think your future plans, even if you don't know where that's going to be, think about where you might fit in by taking this course. For your question 2, how have your qualifications and studies helped you to prepare for this course or subject? Don't make the mistake of talking about your grades or exams or anything like that. They don't really want to hear it. It's already in your UCAS application, so you don't need to include things like, I got a C in higher English, because they can see that already and it just wastes the characters. What you should be doing is using this space to, again, talk about any training you've received that could relate to it. Have you done any first aid training in college, in school, or anything like that? Is there been any secondary sort of courses that you've managed to take on? And what sort of relevant skills have you gained from those things that you've done? And how is it relevant to what you're wanting to do? So take those skills of, like, let's say you did CPR. I think I did CPR back in school, but they do it a lot nowadays. How is that relevant to where you want to go? So obviously CPR is quite relevant into healthcare and things like that, or first aid training. So you could tell them what they learnt, whether, was it good communication skills? Was it the importance of time management and things like that? So really think about those skills and how they can be relevant. And of course, you can include educational achievements. That isn't things like, again, your courses or your exams. That's things like if you've got extracurricular achievements, maybe you went on a trip or you won an award for something that you're quite passionate about and want to talk about. So question 3, this is the one I'd expect to be the longest for you guys. And I usually say this generally, we expect question 3 to be the longest out of all of them. Question 2, less so. It's what else have you done to prepare outside of education and why are these experiences useful? So for this, this is supposed to be about you, anything personal that you've gone through or that you've experienced, your hobbies, what you're passionate about. And like I said before, this is where, particularly in the healthcare sector, this is what they look for. They want to see your work experience. They want to see any volunteering, any personal life experiences. And again, you need to ask yourself why. So for every point you make, we want to see the skills you've gained from it and why that is relatable to the course you've chosen. So, let's say you've got teamwork skills and you've got that from your work experience. So explain the work experience, explain how that's developed you to get the a team working aspect or a leadership skill. And again, refer that back to this is important because this is something that would be incredibly useful within nursing or within paramedicine or things like that. So really think about those different aspects and always back up why. If you've made a point, go back over and check you've answered why to all those things. And again, I've put in your hobbies or extracurricular activities outside school, college, things like that. They do want to see you as a person. They want to see what you do, how passionate you are, how caring you are. They're not really bothered about looking at the grade aspect when particularly our healthcare side of things. They want to see what you do as a whole. So, unsure of what to include. Again, I mentioned before, you can include anything about yourself that's volunteering, work experience, hobbies, anything that could be relevant. Personal life, so do you look after a sibling? Is that relevant in some way? Is there any caring aspect that you do at home that could be relevant as well? You've got charity work, so perhaps perhaps you've been helping with some of the campaigns for protests and things or peaceful protests, and you may want to include that because it's been a really good experience or you've really gained something from that. You've got career plans and things like that that you can also include. So just bear in mind for anything in our nursing, healthcare, anything in that sort of sector, they are keen to see what you do outside of school and college. So again, all the sort of hobbies, work experience, and volunteering. Our top tips would be to plan a structure. It's easier said than done with no context, but we have got, I don't know if you can see my mouse. No. Yes, maybe. We've got mind map here, which you can just type in mind map on Google and it comes up. It's a digital mind mapping ability, and it really helps you plan out your personal statement bit by bit so that you don't have to sit there and think, how am I going to structure this and what's it going to look like? Make sure you provide evidence and examples. So again, I said earlier, if you are doing work experience and you've got leadership skills, this is where you'd include that. And again, justify your points of why you've got leadership skills from that experience and why it's relevant to the course you've chosen. Keep the points concise as possible. Use a prospectus or a university website. So again, you can research the courses. If you're applying to multiple ones, we say don't mention the course you're applying to. We just state that you write it as an all-round overall one that kind of covers all of them. But this is why we say if you want to go into nursing, make sure you know that you want to go into adult, or if you want to go into childcare, or if you want to go into mental health. We ideally hope that you can kind of pinpoint which one you'd prefer. They prefer you to be really direct, particularly for RGU at least, if you're going into paramedic practice, they want you to know exactly that that's what you want to do. They don't want to see you trying to fit into a nursing, or trying to fit into mental health. They'll want to see you go, that's what you want, paramedic practice is the way to go. Leading on to this, Don't mention other universities by name. They hate if you see a university by name, they'll scrap it and they'll chuck it away. So what I will say though is I know some people have attended workshops and programs in universities or open days. You can state that you've attended programs on a university campus, or you can state that you have attended open days at universities, just as long as you don't state a university by name. And if you're applying to multiple courses, that's what I was trying to say earlier, make sure it's applicable to all of them as much as you possibly can. Just bear in mind that when it comes to healthcare, they want you to be as direct as possible. So a checklist, strong opening statement for each answer. So ideally, if you're starting a personal statement, we don't want to see you starting with, I want to go into nursing because it's going to have been done. We're going to have seen it. We want to start something with a bit more excitement, maybe your passions for nursing and where it begun, Don't say things like, I wanted to do nursing the moment I was born, because frankly, it's probably not true. That's not the first thing you would have thought of. Think about when that passion began and what really got you started. And that's how you can create a really good opening statement that's going to engage the reader. Justification for your course choice and evidence that you've researched it. So again, this will kind of happen naturally as you write your personal statement. And it's again talking about why you've chosen that course and the reasons behind it. And again, your evidence will show this because you'll be able to make points about the course that you've researched. Try and not delve too much into it if you've got multiple ones that you're applying to again, but it'll be fine if you're talking about the reasons why you're sort of picking that course, if it's passionate about it and you've got your work experience to back it up and that's your evidence that you've researched. Hobbies, interests, and skills. So again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is sort of just your repeats, but this is your checklist to include your hobbies and interests and your skills. That's what they're going to look for the most. And your future plans for your further study and career. So include the future plans in your first paragraph rather than the end. And again, you can always refer back to that as you write your personal statement. So moving on to your purpose of an interview. So obviously when you're doing healthcare, or if you're applying to most universities that have got any kind of aspect of healthcare, or do you do interviews, and they tend to be where you have to sit and face a person and discuss these things, and it can be quite intense if you don't know what to expect. So usually they're to determine the suitability of you, and this goes for all things, jobs, courses, but it's to determine if you're suitable for that role or for going into that course. And sometimes it's to determine if you've picked the right one for you. So for you, you can actually use this chance to gain information about the course or a position if it was a job, give the information about yourself to the interviewee. You can expand on information provided on a CV, or in your case, it'll probably be your personal statements, because you only have so much space to fill. And if you have more to talk about, that's great, you can talk about it. And again, it's find out more about the company or benefits, or in your case, it would be university. So find out more about the university and what benefits they have there. The interviewee or interviewer, the employer, or in this case, the university, they're going to see that you will be able to manage doing this course, and that you'll do the job, you'll get everything done. You're going to be motivated, and you're going to have the willingness and availability. And I'm going to make sure that you fit into the organization, or in this case, whether you fit into the course, because for me personally, I went for an interview once for a course at a university, and they got back to me and said that we actually think you're more appropriate for this course, and this one isn't appropriate because there's a different one that would fit you better, which can happen. So just bear that in mind. There is different ways of them checking these things for you. So preparing for the interview, which is probably the bit you're really wanting to know, because it can be quite scary if you get offered an interview and you don't know what to expect. And main thing is to confirm your interview. Confirm your interview, your time, and the expected duration. Check if it's online or if it's in person, because some universities will offer in-person interviews and some will offer just online. So make sure you check that it is, which one it is, and which one, how much distance you might have to travel for it as well if it is an in-person one. So again, you can acknowledge the attendance of that. This one is less important for you guys, clarifying company name, address, and telephone number. You don't really need to do this for a university, but if you have multiple universities you've applied for and you may be unsure of which ones emailed you, not likely, they tend to show you all the details, then that's something you can check as well. But that's handy for jobs as well. Thoroughly read the job description, advert, and understand the role. So again, this is an interview for healthcare. It would be a little bit different. You already know what you're sort of applying to. You're going into the course, you know what to sort of expect. But again, I would say read over the course just so you know what course you've applied to and you know everything's fresh in your mind right before you go in. Know yourself, what's on your CV. Should be a given, but some people forget if you've left it a while and you've maybe forgotten what you've written in your personal statement or in your CV, which does happen. It might be good to refresh it so that you know beforehand when you go in for an interview what you've actually talked about. This wouldn't be the first time they've brought something up and you'd be like, I didn't know about that. I forgot I wrote it. You can find out about the organization and culture. So again, this is what I meant with the university. So it's a really good chance for you to view the university or find out about the people or the team you might be working with. And you can also ask about the student life or the work-life balance that they provide. Consider questions that you may be asked, which you can actually check. So you can actually research types of questions that you might be asked for this. I have a few example questions that they might go for. We've got prepare for potential answers as well, and you always have to back them up with evidence, which we'll go over through the STAR method. And you can also prepare questions to ask for yourself. So you can go in and you can ask questions about the course. And again, it's always good to have questions prepared. So I was talking about the STAR approach earlier, so we'll go over this now. And I suggest using this not just for this interview, for like healthcare interviews, I suggest using the STAR method for all interviews because it just keeps you covered. It's a fantastic way of answering any questions that they ask. They'll check your competence, the behavioral and administrative. There tends to be the sort of style of questions they ask, and that covers skills, your personality, salary, if it was job based, but attitude, motivation, your achievements, and things like that. So, again, generally, this is used in jobs, but it's also used in a university, and it's incredibly important to try and answer things in this format. So for a competence, you might get asked things like, give me an example of where you demonstrated your ability to work effectively as part of a team. And going back to the, well, I say going back to the STAR approach. For this one, I would suggest you'd have to give them an answer of, so where it says give them an example, give them an example of a place or a time where you've worked with a group of people. When they say have you demonstrated ability as part of a team to work effectively? What did you do in that team that made it so that you demonstrated that successfully? And what was the input? What was the output of that? You know, what when it was actioned, what was the output? So you've got your point that you made, why, so which is what happened, why you've done it, and what was the outcome. Similarly, you've got for behavioral questions, why are you interested in working in this organization, or use 3 adjectives to describe yourself. For these, there are ones that are particularly, I don't particularly like these ones, they can throw you off. Use 3 adjectives to describe yourself. An example, they're not just expecting you to pull out loads of different words, they want you to give a word and describe why, you know, back it up and give your reasons why, and not just why, give some evidence as to why. So why do you think that? Why are you interested in working for this organization is less important for the university and for like nursing, what they're going to ask you, but might be relevant for a job. Describe a situation where you might be faced with conflict in a workplace. What was the outcome? Again, you're following that same STAR approach. So it is describing that situation, the action that you did, and then what was the outcome. They kind of piece it together, but sometimes when they're asking these questions, it can be overwhelming. And administrative, again, less so for you guys because this is more about salary and things like that. But you might be asked, what type of environment do you work best in? So you can give an example what environment you work best in, whether that's teamwork based environments. You could say, I work best in teamwork based environments. An example of this was when I did a placement, and this was the reasons why, and this is my outcome for that. This is the benefit that I've gained from that, if that makes sense. So this is what I was sort of explaining to you just now. You've got your situation. So that's the situation that they've basically named off to you, and you've given that question. Tasks. So start by describing the situation you were in or the task that you were given. Action. Describe the action you took and process followed by the steps to complete it. This is usually the action you've taken in that process. So not the overall team, just what you took. And then the result. What was the result? This is the important part. This is what they're looking for, whether it was a successful outcome, and what have you learned from that as well. And then again, with your reflection, it's again, you could talk about for nursing, like I've mentioned here. You could say, why has your experience made you want to study nursing? So that could be why. Whatever you've learned through those, whether it was through a part-time job or a work experience, that could have led you to wanting to do nursing because of that experience. So always go into the reflection. The result and reflection are the most important parts of this. Body language. So if you are in Teams calls, this is still just as important as it would be if you were in person. They want to see eye contact as much as you possibly can. Posture, make sure that you're not slouched over, or worse if your camera's turned off, which I've been in meetings before where people have just turned the cameras off. Make sure you show your engagement. Your facial expressions can say a lot if they're talking to you. And again, your tone of voice, because if you're sounding really dull and boring, they're going to think you're not interested. Make sure that you are giving good eye contact and listening to everything they say and interacting with what they say as well. So communication skills. Be mindful of your environment. Basically, this goes on with Teams or in person interviews. Because if you're in Teams, you don't want to be in a really. I took a Teams call in a cafe once, and I forgot my earphones, so it was really loud, and the environment meant that they couldn't really hear me on the other side of the Teams call, which then doesn't look very professional. So just be mindful of your own environment to make sure that you are in a quiet place if you're doing a Teams call. And if you're in person, it's less so. They usually take you to a room, but just so you're ready for things like that. Remember your boundaries. So think of the person that you are presenting, not that you are a friend or a family member. You want to make sure that you present yourself in a professional manner. Tone of voice so that you are, again, not coming across as bored or like you don't want to be there. And there's a difference between being friendly and just being friends. You might act differently with a friend, you might be a bit more jokey, or maybe give a lot of like personal talks with your friends. You want to avoid that if you're in a interview process, which again covers this sort of aspect of things you might want to avoid. Politics is a good one. So you shouldn't ever really talk about politics in an interview. It shouldn't really lead that way, or anything that could be a hard subject to cover. But just be mindful that you might want to avoid those because it can be quite a difficult one to come back from. Think about what you share and when as well. So if you're sharing these things and you're saying you've said them or sent them, it's really easy for somebody else to say that this has happened in a different way. So just be mindful of that. Language and vocabulary. Oh my goodness, trying to say that word. So be considerate of how you're interacting with somebody. You don't want to be treating them like they're just a pal or a friend. Just make sure that you're using the correct language that you should be doing. So do's and don'ts for your interview process. Do's, again, be positive, be enthusiastic. You can give real life examples to back up your star points. I usually say to people, practice these beforehand. There's loads of ways you can practice the STAR method before you go into an interview. So you don't have to sit and worry about going in and not really knowing what they're going to ask. You can prepare beforehand. Speak clearly and concisely, talk about your strengths. It's also good to say that it's okay to talk about your weaknesses, providing you say what you've learned from them and how you plan to grow from them, or how you've tackled a weakness and it's made it into a strength. Be truthful, but again, don't volunteer negative information. So you don't want to say, again, going on to strengths and weaknesses, you don't want to say, oh, I'm really bad at math though. it doesn't benefit you, and it doesn't look good in an interview. Even if you're feeling a bit more relaxed and you think you can make a joke about these things, you just want to avoid the negative aspects unless you can turn it into a positive. Again, don't underestimate your own skills and abilities, because if you underestimate your own skills, then how are they supposed to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? Try not to ramble or waffle. I'm really bad for rambling and waffling myself, but you'll know if you're rambling and waffling because you'll go off on a tangent and forget probably halfway what you're actually saying. Antagonize or argue with the interviewer. I've never heard of somebody doing this. And I've never had anybody do this before, but it should be pretty self-explanatory to not argue with someone that you're interviewing with, or it's not going to go well. And again, if you're talking about your weaknesses without saying what you're doing about them. So again, this is what I was going back to with talking about your strengths. So you can talk about your weaknesses if you can say that you're making points to improve those weaknesses, or you've turned that weakness into a strength. And a big one, which a lot of people make mistakes on, is don't criticize a past, present colleague or a manager. Or in your case, you can even talk, you can't, you could even mention universities. So it'd be best to avoid criticizing previous universities that you've maybe been to and gone, oh, well, at this university, I didn't like this environment. Avoid talking about any other university in your case. And again, this applies for jobs. Just don't badmouth any other previous people, because it doesn't look good and they're going to think that you are a negative person. So it's best to just avoid it. Okay, reviewing your performance. Once you've had your interview, you can get feedback, see how you did. Usually this is after the response. If you find that you don't get the job, that's okay, or you don't get a place, you can ask for why you didn't get a place, or what it was that maybe went wrong. So you can talk about your performance and what you did well. So if you really want to cover what you successfully did, that's something you can cover as well. You can review your body language. So really think about, did I present myself in the way that I wanted to be presented? Could I have done better? So these are things you can also think about. Did you feel uncomfortable or unprepared? Because again, this is all about preparation. A lot of this is all about preparation. As I mentioned with personal statements, interviews are the same. You can prepare with star questions beforehand. They're not going to be the questions they ask, but if you prepare with answers so you know how to answer them, then you'll be more readily prepared. As the same as if you come in with questions prepared to ask them. And what could you have done better? What would you do differently next time? So again, this comes under the preparation. If you felt unprepared, is there a way you could have done things different next time, or is there ways you could have done things better? So in summary, it's all about preparation. I just said, do your research. So do your research on the university or on the course that you're applying to, or the job, if it's a job. Know yourself. So know yourself with what your strengths are, minimize your weaknesses, sell your strengths. And again, if it's minimizing weaknesses, that's fine. You can also talk about your weaknesses in a confident way, by explaining what you're doing to fix those weaknesses or strengthen them. And be confident. Ultimately, you're going in to this place as a confident person because you believe you can do this. This is something you believe that you are right to do. This is what you want to do. So you should go in feeling confident. They've chosen you based off a personal statement, and that's a hard step to get to in itself. So be confident that you've actually made it to that stage. Perfect. So that's all from me. If we have any questions, that's quite a lot to digest, but I believe we can have the screen available should anybody need it, the slides even. But if anybody has any questions, I can answer. Nothing.
Okay, we have one question here.
Yeah.
How much time do you think I should spend on an average to prepare statement? Should I share my statement with others like teachers or anyone who can advise me to check?
Absolutely. You can share with teachers to check your personal statements. They are 100% there to support that. Better with guidance teachers or support staff, because that's the sort of region they're planning to support with. Time-wise, I'd say spend as much time as you need on it, as long as it's in before the deadline. My go-to is, say, usually before Christmas. Get it in before Christmas. spend a lot of time prepping for that. I usually say give yourself 2 weeks, set yourself a timeline, 2 weeks of mind mapping, planning your structure for your personal statement. And then after that, it's writing it. You know, set yourself an afternoon a week if you want to, or set yourself, you know, it could be a day if you wanted to just get it all done in one day. I think breaking it up makes it a little bit easier. It is in question format. Some people can bullet point it. It's whatever you find easiest, but it's different for everybody. Everybody spends different times preparing for personal statements, just as long as you get it in before Christmas. Because after Christmas, although the deadline is after Christmas, by the time you've approached Christmas, you're not going to be in the frame of mind to continue that personal statement afterwards. Let's face it, we're all thinking Christmas holidays, New Year. You're not going to be in the frame of mind to go and do that. So get it in beforehand. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, yeah, that's it. There's no more. We have anyone posting? No, there's no other questions. I've just posted a evaluation link for this session, so if you can just spare 2 minutes and complete that link, that'll be great. And thank you, Jade, for doing this like previous year. Thank you for sparing your time and delivering this session. It was very useful and a lot of information, as you said.
It's a lot to digest, yeah.
Yeah, but thank you so much. Oh, there's somebody. Okay. Do you need recommendations from teachers?
Not for a personal statement, but for your UCAS, yes. So when you're doing a UCAS form, we do recommend that you get your recommendations from teachers. It could be college, it could be anybody in your school that you want to sign off on that recommendation. But for a personal statement itself, no.
Okay. Okay, so I think
Cool.
yeah, that's answered. Yeah. Thank you very much, Jade. Thank you all for joining in. The last session is at 2:30 today. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.